Grandma's Apple Butter Venture. Introduction. Welcome, everybody. My name is Kenneth Thompson. My introduction is business must establish and deliberate on the following before or during the operation: a supply chain design and strategy, pricing mechanism, ways to manage supply and demand, network design, aggregating planning, transportation, distribution networks, sustainability, and biblical perspective integration. Recommendations for supply chain and strategy are the following. Supply chain design involves making decisions about supply chain structure and which processes each stage will perform. Strategic supply chain decisions include location, capacities of facilities, the number of products to be produced or stored at various locations, modes or transportations, and information systems. Recommendation for supply chain and strategy. There are many supply chain structures that Grandma's Apple Butter Venture can adopt and use for its operations. My recommendation is the company comes up with a supply chain design that supports its strategic objectives. Recommendations for the supply chain and strategy. Continuation. In executing supply chain design, Grandma's Apple Butter Venture should supply chain strategies to integrate all supply chain players efficiently. But doing so, the cost of meeting customers' needs will be lowered. The best supply chain strategies make use of certain best practices like being practical in setting up the supply chain, focusing on the customers and the management of the supply chain, controlling the trade-offs between cost and service, establishing communication with all supply chain players, adapting to change in the business environment. It is recommended that Grandma's Apple Butter Venture develop a strategy that uses the above best practices. Recommendation for pricing and managing supply and demand. Pricing is the mechanism by which a company determines the price at which it will offer its goods and services. The mechanism can be part of the marketing strategy of the company. Grandma's Apple Butter Venture must choose a pricing strategy that matches its product quality, meets its customers' expectation. Examples of price strategies include marketing penetration pricing, value-based pricing, competitive pricing, price skimming, cost plus pricing. Recommendation for pricing, managing supply, demand. One of the most challenging tasks of a businessman is fulfilling the requirements of the market. That is, to control supply and demand. This will be the case for Grandma's Apple Butter Venture. Therefore, Grandma's Apple Butter Venture must use various methods to estimate through forecasting, increase or decrease supply through manufacturing. Recommendations for network design, aggregating planning. Supply chain network design is the process of designing and modeling a supply chain to understand better the cost and time involved in delivering products to the market with the assets and locations accessibility. Grandma's Apple Butter Venture should ask itself several questions in the process of designing a supply chain network. The questions to answer will adequately help the venture come up with a good supply network design. This figure shows kind of a breakdown of how that aggregating plan will go out, listed here. Outsourcing raw materials, storage or transportation, production, outbound storage and transportation, wholesalers, retailers, and consumers. I recommend that Grandma's Butter Venture adopt such a supply chain network design because of its advantages. The network design suits the venture, considering it's yet to establish itself in the market. Grandma's apple butter venture will benefit from outsourcing if it embraces the network design. The network design enables the venture to use wholesalers and retailers to sell the finished goods, including wholesalers and retailers in the network. The design ensures the venture enjoys many benefits from intermediaries. Aggregated planning is a key component of any given sector. Grandma's apple butter venture can complete its business plans on the advice of the forecast of demand. The venture can work backwards from final sales to the raw materials required. The plan is therefore broken down into labor, raw materials, working capital. This method of drawing up output criteria for the medium term is called aggregating planning. Recommendations for transportation and distribution networks. The distribution network is an integrated collection of storage facilities, transport networks that collects goods, inventories, and then supplies to the consumer. It is its intermediaries point to bring goods from the venture manufacturing facilities to the end consumer, either direct or via retail network. A fast and efficient delivery network is important in today's consumer culture or intermediate satisfaction. Recommendation related to sustainability and biblical perspective integration. Sustainability is an important factor in today's world of business. A sustainable company is an enterprise that engages in environmentally sustainable or green practices to ensure that its processes, goods, manufacturing practices, acceptable resolve current environment issues while retaining profits. Sustainability or decision-making process will yield substantial financial benefits, draw more interest from investors, critical to long-term profitability. People in business should conduct their activities using a biblical perspective of things that are done. The Bible acts as a guide when doing business. Grandma's apple butter venture should aggregate biblical perspective into its dealing with suppliers, distributors, and customers. In concluding, to ensure that one succeeds in setting up a company and entering the competition field market, it is important to consider many things before acting upon that strategy. First aspect of deliberating is the supply chain design strategy to deal with all players involved. The best pricing strategy that will ensure the venture can penetrate and establish itself in the market. Ways to manage supply chain of the product should also be deliberate to ensure that there's no gap between supply and demand. The venture should also design how to finished product will reach the end user faster and cost efficiently. Lastly, it's very important to ensure that the venture is sustainable. It is implying biblical teachings in its operations. Listed below are my references. Thank you very much.